What's going on, everybody? Gary from Killer Off-Road Hobbies here with another project. Yeah, I keep doing this to myself. So I traded the Tundra that I did videos on a little bit ago for this Jeep. Now, this is a 1990 Jeep Wrangler base model YJ. It has a couple goodies, which is why I traded for it, but it does need some help. So let's go through some of the stuff that makes it okay for me to have traded for it. So unfortunately, it's got the 2.5 4-cylinder, but I do hope to do an engine swap later on. We'll talk more about that. It's got a fishbone front bumper. It's got a Smitty built rear bumper. It does have a spring over with 4-inch spring lift and boomerang shackles. Yes, this thing is freaking way too tall. I will address that. But it's got a Dana 30 front, 513 gears open. I will address that. It's got a Ford 9-inch in the rear with 513s and a Detroit locker. So it's 513 gears, which makes the 4-cylinder do not okay, but it does get around a little bit. It's got a slip yoke eliminator, and it's sitting on 36-inch TSLs, and that's kind of why I traded for it, was the little bit of work done. So let's do a little bit of a walk around. Now, this thing's not perfect by any means. It does need help. It's got axle seals leaking, the pinion seals leaking, the blinkers don't work. Sorry, my phone went off, but I'm not going to stop the video because of that. It does have brand new seats inside, and it's got 141,000 original miles. Now, that's original miles on this thing. So as you can see, I did wash it and clean it, and it does leak water. Half the gauges don't work, but it's got brand new seats. I put that in here. I put a steering column out of a Jeep Cherokee in it because I needed tilt, and a tilt YJ column is $600, and I got this out of a pick and pull for 65 bucks. So let's hop into this video. I'm gonna do some maintenance on this thing, a water pump and whatnot. So let's get into it. All right, so this is that 2.5 4-cylinder that I told you about on the initial description of this Jeep, this YJ. So right now I'm gonna pull the fan shroud off, drain the coolant, and then we'll pull the fan off and get the belts off and all that stuff. Yeah, so let's get into it. First things first, I'm gonna get this air box out of the way. I'm just gonna pull this, loosen these up. This is a 10mm down here. Go ahead and loosen that up. So there's that. So you're gonna have 4 13mm, just 2 on each side. Well, it looks like I'm gonna have to pull the top radiator hose to get that out. So I don't see a pitcock on this radiator anywhere. So I think what I'm gonna do is just pull that lower radiator hose, because I got new hoses coming, but I'll pull that off and drain the radiator and then get that fan shroud out of there. Well, that was fun. So now I'm going to pull the radiator out. It's just got 5 11mm bolts, 3 on this side, 2 on that side. Alright, so this is what we're looking at now. So look how cute this little fan is. It's barely bigger than my hand. Anyways, so I'm gonna pull the fan off and then probably pull this off. This hose needs to be replaced, it looks like. Oh yeah, it's like split on the backside actually. So I'm gonna start taking this off. I've got a new water pump, new thermostat. From the looks of that radiator, I'm gonna go ahead and go inside and order a new radiator for this thing. I've got new belts, a bunch of new parts coming for this thing. All right, I'm gonna bust these loose. They're 1/2 inch. And that's all 4 of them. Let's see. Gotta use the screwdriver, but once you pop them loose, sorry, I keep putting my hands in the way. Once you pop them loose, they should come off pretty easy. And there it is. That is so weird. There's no adjustment on the power steering pulley. It's just where it is. Look how loose that is. I mean, this hasn't even moved and it's pretty loose. Alright, so next, I already popped these loose. Gonna pull out the thermostat. Just pull this thermostat out. Doesn't look too bad in there. I mean, it's rusty, but that's normal. Hopefully this thing's the culprit. This thing and that crappy radiator that was in here. But all these hoses are just wiped out too. You know, this thing's pretty old and probably didn't get a whole lot of maintenance. Well, everybody, things have escalated. Not really, but I took the alternator off just to clean up this side of the motor. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is pull these 4 bolts out and then loosen this 5th one that's behind the pulley here, right there, and then this just basically swings up out of the way. So now we just got a couple bolts on this water pump. So these are going to be 13 millimeter. And the bottom one's 14. It's got oil on it. I don't know if that's good or bad. And there she is, in all of her glory. Doesn't feel bad, but I'll change her out anyways. And it doesn't look bad in here either. So that's good. I'll clean all this up and scrape off this old sealant and get it ready for all the new stuff. Well, it wasn't necessary, but I decided to basically start cleaning everything up. I'm gonna do a new valve cover gasket, so I went ahead and pulled that off. pretty much just simple stuff. I'm just like cleaning everything because I like to have a clean engine bay. I messed with the wires over there, got everything like tucked down under there underneath the battery tray, but once I start putting it back together, I'll bring you guys back in. But right now, literally, I'm just cleaning everything. So I pulled the valve cover off. Now I'm going to clean up the mating surface and reinstall that, but I'll go ahead and show you guys how I do it. I'm just going to take this scraper and scrape off all the bigger stuff. Actually came off pretty clean. Flathead screwdriver, getting the tire spots. A little wire brush. Alright, so I wanted to show you guys this. So this right here, right there, is your temperature sensor. Looks like this. And it's got this little connector that goes on it right there. And it's a 13 millimeter. I can't really like set my camera up to show you guys, but it's on the back of the motor right there, and it's a 13 millimeter. So we're gonna go ahead and change that. All right, so the new water pump doesn't come with the studs for the fan. So what you're gonna have to do is thread 2 nuts on, about like that. And then tighten them against each other and use the bottom one to break it loose. Then you pull them off. Pull the stud out. So when you pull these studs out, take note that there's a fine coarse thread and a more rigid thread. So the fine coarse thread is the one that goes in to the fan mounting plate on the water pump. And you're just going to thread those in. You got to do that for all 4 of them, basically like that. Like I said, make sure the rougher coarse threads are on the outside. Another thing you got to pull off is this nipple here, because as you can see, this doesn't come with it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that off, probably clean it up a little bit, and then put it in the new water pump. Whew, that bugger was in there. And only by a couple threads. Dang. Literally 3 threads. Alright, so I'm going to clean this up, and then I'm going to put it in this water pump right there. Alright, so it's all cleaned up. Just gonna thread it into here, making sure we do not cross thread it. Feels pretty good. And then we'll just run her down nice and tight. More than 2 threads, I hope. It was in the old water pump. About as high as I'm going to get it, which is a lot further in than it was before. But that's basically your new water pump. Now we're just going to clean this up and then put the gasket on and go ahead and put it in the Jeep. Okay, so what I like to do is put gasket maker on both sides of the gasket. So I'm going to do all of this on the outside of the water pump, not in here, but only on the mating surface. I'll put this on here, and then I'm going to put some on the block. So I'll show you how I start this real quick. So it does have a gasket that goes through here, so I'm going to go ahead and put it there. I don't know if it's necessary or not. And then I just do it basically everywhere. And then I'll put some on the bolts that go through the water pump as well, because I don't like taking this apart to redo it. So that's that part of it. Don't have to worry really about it, just as long as it doesn't like get into your bearings and stuff. But it's okay if it a little bit goes over it or whatever. It's not gonna hurt anything. It's better to have more of this stuff than not enough, for absolute sure. Looks pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead, set the gasket on there. Just get it all lined up, all the holes and everything lined up. And then I'll do it again on this side of the gasket, and then we'll put it on the block. Looks pretty good. So now I'm gonna put it on the block. Alright, so slide it behind that bracket. Like I said, I put some of this gasket maker on the bolt just in case also. So just a little bit. And then put it on in. So you got your 3 bolts, you got your one long one on this side, and then you got your bigger bolt that goes on the bottom underneath right here. These are 13, so I'm just going to snug them. And then the bottom one's a 14. Gasket maker on this long bolt, which is the top one. Just kind of spread it on there, just to make sure. This one, put it through. Bottom bolt. And there it is. should be good. A little bit good and tight. So that right there should be pretty good. New water pump installed, new thermostat installed. I'm gonna get all new hoses and all that stuff. Next is gonna be the valve cover. I wanted to get this stuff on before I did the valve cover. But now I'm gonna do the valve cover. Basically the same thing. I'm gonna put gasket maker before I put the valve cover gasket down, and then put it on basically the bottom and the top, just to make sure I'm not getting leaks. So now we're just gonna tighten the power steering pulley bracket back up. These are just 14 millimeters. Got these 3 shorties. And then this one long one. It goes right here. I got the valve cover set up the way I told you guys, and I'm going to attempt to do this without making too much of a mess. Ooh, I did it all right. So you've got 2 of these that go here and here. Make sure the one with this shoulder, it goes down. All right, so there's one right here. That's kind of hard to get to. What I did was I just held it in there with my finger, put it in there on this little wobble extension, threaded it in, and tightened it down. So I'm just gonna tighten up all these and basically move on to the next step. Alright, I got my new oil pressure sensor. It goes in this little port here that I plugged because I was cleaning the engine up. So on the bottom, it's got this little thing that you can put a wrench on, 14 millimeter, and you just screw it in down here. It's already got a sealant on the threads. Gonna get it nice and snug, and this should fix my oil pressure issue. The gauge was working, but it was just showing that I had 80 psi of oil pressure, which would be awesome, but I doubt that's realistic. So I think the sending unit was bad, so I got one. And it does have this threaded, or it does have this like hexagonal thing up here that you could throw a wrench on, but from my experience from taking the old one off, that's not very strong. This bottom part is much better to get a hold of. just gonna get this out. And that should be plenty. And if we get an oil leak there, I'll just tighten it up a little bit more. But this wiring harness right here, this little green lead goes to it. Well, I skipped forward a little bit. I got the alternator back on. I got new belts, both of them. This one's adjustable with the alternator on the bracket. This one you got to roll on. It's super easy, especially with the 4-cylinder. Just put a 19 millimeter on the crank bolt, put it up on the pulley after you run it, and then just roll it over. Super simple. Other than that, I replaced the heater core hoses, just cleaned, basically just kind of cleaned everything up. Did a bunch of maintenance type stuff. I put a new oil fill cap on it because it was leaking. I actually got the windshield wipers working. I had to pull the top off and all that, but I didn't think you guys needed to see that stuff. So pretty much going back together. I got the fan painted up and put back on. Literally right now, all I'm waiting on is the radiator. I did pull the track bar out. I mean, this thing's on leaf springs. It doesn't need it. I don't even know why they came with it. I am debating too pulling off the sway bar. So I took the track bar off, but I'm debating pulling the sway bar off. I've got way more parts coming for this thing, but I've got to wait till the radiator gets here. I'll put the radiator in, get this thing fired up, and see how it goes. So I did clean the TBI system. You know, it's just got the one single injector in that carburetor thing. I cleaned that all up. You know, I've just been trying to clean it up, make it look better. But just waiting on the radiator, and then we'll get this thing put back together and running. So sorry to skip ahead, but I've been really pressed for time. So I just went ahead and threw the fan on, the shroud, the new radiator hose. Unfortunately for me, I accidentally ordered 2 tops, so I'm still running the old bottom hose, but it was pretty new, so it's not like it's a big deal. But hey, you know, on the positive side, I have 2 upper radiator hoses. So this is a 3-core aluminum radiator. It's supposedly an upgrade. It didn't fit that great. It was $150. So yeah, that was pretty disappointing. And of course, the hardware for the stock radiator didn't work for this radiator. So I had to find some in my little stash there that worked. But it's in here, it ain't going anywhere. This is on here, ain't going anywhere. Basically, all I need to do is put some coolant in it and fire it up. I replaced a bunch of the vacuum hoses that were pretty rough shape. I replaced like the heater core hoses. One thing that really sucks is when I took this apart and was basically cleaning it out and putting a new Wix filter in here, I found out there was a full bee nest in the input right here, so that was probably restricting my air. But I was looking at it and I'm like, man, this tube is so dirty. It's because there were several holes in it. So I'm gonna have to find a new one, but I just Gorilla taped it right now so I can get this thing running because I wanna fire it up. Before I do though, I'm gonna go ahead and change on the oil and put some new coolant in it, you know, burp it, get it up to temp and everything, but I'll show you guys that. Sorry, I skipped ahead, but I've been really pressed for time, and recording takes time and all that stuff. So let's fire it up here in a minute and we will see how I did. So the oil's changed, everything's put back together. I double, triple, quadruple checked everything. So I guess let's see if it fires up. massive exhaust leak, which I didn't fix, but it started right up. It sounds pretty good. I'm gonna wait for the thermostat to open, then top the coolant off, and that'd be pretty much it. Well, if you ignore the extreme exhaust leak from the manifold, it's been doing pretty good. Hopefully this video was informative or entertaining for you guys. But I've been driving this thing for about 2 weeks now since I did all the work to it, and it's been doing awesome, except for it's a 4-cylinder with no power. Everything came out good. I've got no leaks, no nothing like that. So yeah, hopefully this kind of shows you guys how to do what I did, you know, just normal maintenance stuff. It wasn't hard, didn't take me very long, and hopefully you guys enjoyed. So this is Gary from Killer Off-Road Hobbies saying we'll see you on the next one. Peace.